When the Avalanche stopped, and it was crazy. He's gone. He's not under. I can't see him. I can't see a glove or anything. And I got my beacon out right away, and I just I thought to myself, man, give me 2 minutes, buddy. I got you. We've practiced for this. I'll get you. And then after minutes went by and there was just no signal, it was that was when reality hit. That this is going to be we're going to have to probe for him. I love that video. I think they did a great job putting that together, and we kind of alluded to it in the video that Rob and I we traveled the world. We went to Japan, Sweden, Iceland, Norway, and a lot of those places multiple times. And Rob was always the life of the party. He was the guy cracking all the jokes, and I was kind of the quiet guy over in the corner. And so I know he's up in heaven now making fun of me because this isn't my favorite thing to do, but bear with me. Rob was on a snowmobile ride. He would tone it down if there was somebody that was not as experienced, and most importantly, he wanted everyone to have fun. I got picked up on the Arctic Cat team, and I was actually riding a Skidoo for a year, and I needed help as a young racer, and I knew that Rob just lived over the hill from me in Victor, Idaho, and so I reached out to him and I said, hey, let's go ride. And so he invited me to go on a ride, and I'm like 19, maybe 20 at the time, and the mountain range from Victor going south towards like Alpine, Wyoming, the further south you go, the more complex the terrain gets and avalanche terrain gets. And we were a ways back in there, and I watched the sun start to go down, and I watched a big modified snowmobile not being able to climb out. And I looked at one of the guys and in our group, and I said, man, have you ever spent the night in here? And he's like, I haven't, but my dad has multiple times. So we finally got out of off that ride, well after dark, and I was hooked. I was an adrenaline rush the whole time, and that was kind of the start of our friendship and our riding together. As the snowmobiles progressed and kept getting better and better, I remember Rob and I having this conversation, and I was like, that's cool. Like it's fun going back south and that, but I can have just as much fun, close to the truck and close to the, in some of the more mellow terrain, in the trees and stuff. And so we did. We kind of stopped doing those big rides in that big country. And but all of a sudden, it was 2020, and Rob, for some reason, he's like, let's get everyone together and let's go on a big ride like we used to do, go back south. And so he kind of called all of his best friends, and it actually happened to fall on my anniversary, my wedding anniversary. But my wife's cool, and she's like, yeah, it's all good. So we went, and on that day, actually in that video, the shot of Rob jumping the snowmobiles off of his flatbed, that's the trailhead that we were at the day that he passed. And as you can see, it's small. There's not really a turnaround area. And so I actually parked in the lower parking lot. And another friend of mine pulled in, and we were getting ready, and here comes Rob smoking by, and he goes to the upper parking lot. And I told my buddy Bruce, I was like, oh man, we got to get up, because Rob was always giving me a hard time, and I was like, he's going to give me a hard time because we're going to look like we're late. And Bruce was like, Dave, my batteries are dead in my beacon. And I was like, oh, no worries, I've got an extra beacon. But we took the batteries out of my beacon and put them in his beacon, being that he knows his beacon better than the loaner from me. And we left. And I knew Rob was going to bust my balls about being late. And for some reason that day he didn't. And I would have, in that day, I would have said, oh, well, we were dinking around with batteries and stuff. And, but, yeah, and at this point, it wasn't like standard procedure to have a beacon check at the start of a ride. I know it should have been, but you know, growing up, snowmobiling all my life, now it is. Now it's just commonplace. But at this point, it wasn't. And unfortunately, that day we did not have a beacon check. We did discuss the Avalanche report, and we kind of talked about our plan for the day, which is pretty similar, commonplace for every one of our rides. And the only where we went wrong is the Avalanche report was low for everything below 9,000, and then above 9,000, it said in the afternoon on south-facing slopes, as the temperatures warm, there's potential for human-triggered wind slab avalanches. So we all kind of agreed on the plan for the day and headed in. And we got to the top of Palisades Peak, and when you're on top of Palisades Peak, you can look down to the Upper Palisades Lake, and that was where we were planning to have lunch. So we went in there to drop down and have lunch. What's kind of a side note, one day on a previous ride, we were on top of Palisades Peak, and we noticed some buddies were down, or some snowmobilers were down at the lake. And so we were like, oh, let's go down and check them out, go see who that is. Well, it's kind of some hardcore bad A dudes that would ride that terrain quite often. Older guys, like 50, 60 years old guys. And so we rolled up to them, and it's a creek-fed high mountain lake, and because it's fed by a spring, there's a section of the water that never freezes. Well, these dudes, this old guy, he, for fun, would skip across that open water. And so that day, it happened as we showed up to the edge of the lake. We were showing up to 3 guys swimming, and so Clint had sunk his snowmobile, and Tommy and Steve had decided they were going to go in and rescue him, and because Clint was dying, the water's freezing cold. So we got there right as all 3 of them were coming to the shore, and so we instantly. Rob was a mountain man. He taught me more respect for Mother Nature than anybody, and he knew exactly what to do. We got a raging fire going instantly. We took off our dry clothes. We put our dry clothes on those guys, and we pretty much spent the rest of the day just drying clothes out and getting those guys warmed up, and then we doubled them out. And funny story, because the next day, as you can imagine, it was a big rescue mission, and my job was to get the float tube, like a fly fishing float tube, and another guy's job was to build a grapple, like a rebar grapple hook, and another guy's job was to get a bunch of rope. And so I pumped up the float tube, and Rob goes out and he's looking down at this M1000 that's in the bottom of this pristine mountain lake, and he's using this grapple hook to fish it down, and he got mad at me because I didn't pump up the float tube enough, and so he's out there and he's kind of borderline like sinking. So then we pull him in and pump it up again. But yeah, this was commonplace. There was a heli ski chopper flying over us all the while we're pulling this snowmobile out of this lake. And finally, after so many hours, the helicopter just landed. And he's like, "What in the world are you guys doing?" So we're telling that's the day of Rob's Avalanche. We're at that lake, telling these stories and having fun. And Rob had the biggest heart, and he's such a good guy, and I remember him telling me, he just straight to my face, he said, Dave, you breaking your back saved your life. And so 2 years prior, 2018, for the second time, I burst my L1 vertebrae while filming for Arctic Cat. And so we leave the lake, and we're headed up, and I'm following them, and we're just having, it's great conditions, and I can't get that out of my mind. I just keep thinking about, this, that saved my life, so then we keep going, and one of those old dudes, he had put a mailbox on this ridge. And so it was when he would leave the house that morning, and his wife would say, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to check the mail." So we went. It's kind of a destination. So we went to the mailbox and we checked the mail, and we dropped off of that ridge. And I remember Rob and we were always kind of vying for the lead, and I was wanting to be in the lead, but I was like, oh, this is Rob's ride. He organized it. I better let him go. And so this literally was the first south slope that we had climbed. Prior to this, we'd been heading south, and now we're heading north, but we're climbing a south slope, and it slid, and I sat at the bottom, as we're supposed to, one guy on the hill at a time, and I'd seen Rob outrun avalanches before, and I watched him, and there was no time for him to pull his bag, but the thing that got him was there was this steep ledge, and rather than being able to just kind of outrun it and go down, when he went off that steep ledge, it made his sled airborne, and then when he landed, the whole avalanche just piled up on top of him. And so this wasn't my first avalanche rescue. In 2006, I was in Island Park one day, and some guys randomly just rode up to me, and they said, "Hey, there's been an avalanche. Do you guys have avalanche equipment?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." So I rode like 5 minutes following this kid to this giant avalanche, and at this point there's probably 20 people searching, and it was a big avalanche. They said last time we saw him was clear at the top of this mountain, and we're searching at the bottom, and I remember vividly that I didn't see that avalanche. I didn't witness it, but I had 5 minutes of riding my snowmobile, preparing for what I was going to be doing, that I was a wreck. I was so nervous, and I barely could, put my probe together and stuff. And again, that guy wasn't in our group. He had forgot to put his beacon on that morning, and unfortunately, that was a fatality. But then 2 weeks later, in a ride that I was a part of, there was an avalanche, and 2 guys got buried, and we found the first guy pretty quick. We found the second guy just in time. I would have never believed a person's face could be so blue and still survive. The guy, I remember him, he took a breath, and 58 seconds later he took another breath, and 56 seconds later another breath. He was close, but we got him. So now, here Rob's buried, and I, like on the video, I was confident. I knew what I was doing. I grabbed my beacon, and what keeps me up at night is, for some reason, I walked right out onto the avalanche, right, probably within 15 feet of where we found him. Like I got my beacon out, and nothing, no signal, no nothing. In the commotion of 9 guys, getting their beacons turned to search, I think, some guys were messing with their beacons. We got some false readings that kind of led us astray. But after so long, we realized it was just going to be a probe search. Yeah, I think I read the report today, and it was 2.5 hours before we finally got him out of snow, and of course he was gone. We tried CPR and everything, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'm here today. Rob's passing, I think, had a huge impact on, at least on this motorized side of the sport. And talking with Jeff, there's been, that following year, there was a huge increase in Avalanche education and training that went ahead, which is great. And yeah, I mean, no one should ever have to experience what we went through that day. And I guess similar to what Rob said to me that day at the lake, where he's like, Dave, breaking your back saved your life. Well, I feel like Rob hopefully is saving lives with his story. And I guess that's all I got.
Thank you.